The blizzard howls like a living thing, rattling the windows of Mira's isolated shelter. Snow pelts the glass in violent gusts as she adds another log to the hungry fire. The forecast had promised clear skies, just one more thing that has failed her this year. She wraps her hands around a steaming mug, grateful for the sturdy walls between her and the storm's fury. A sound cuts through the winter's wrath, distinct and deliberate. Not wind, not settling timber. Mira tilts her head, listening intently. The mountains play tricks on a lonely wolf's mind. The wind mimics voices. Tree branches against glass imitate claws. After weeks of solitude, one's imagination fills the silence with ghosts. Still, Mira doesn't regret leaving her old life behind. Her mate, her pack, her place. Some call it a breakdown. Mira calls it survival. Another sound, louder now, undeniable, followed by a whine that definitely doesn't belong to the wind. Mira's heart hammers against her ribs as she rises slowly from her chair. The rifle hangs above the fireplace, her last defense against the wilderness. She grabs it, fingers trembling on the cold metal. It's probably just a branch, she whispers, trying to convince herself, or a fox seeking shelter. But deep down, she knows foxes don't howl like that. Through frost-rimmed glass, her breath catches. 2 wolves huddle against her door, their fur crusted with snow and ice. The smaller one lies collapsed, blood staining the pristine white beneath in alarming crimson streaks. The larger wolf, massive and silver gray, paws frantically at her door. Its amber eyes lock with hers through the window. Mira stumbles backward. Every wilderness safety lecture she's ever attended flashes through her mind. Wild wolves are not pets. Do not approach. Do not engage. Never let down your guard. The silver wolf whines, a sound so mournful it pierces something deep in Mira's chest. It turns back to its fallen companion, nudging the smaller wolf's muzzle with gentle desperation. They'll find shelter elsewhere, Mira tells herself, gripping the rifle tighter. They survive winters without human help. But the smaller wolf isn't moving now. Its breathing comes in shallow, visible puffs that grow fainter with each exhale. The silver wolf looks back at Mira, and something in those eyes stops her cold. Not aggression, not the blank stare of a mindless predator. Those eyes hold an impossible intelligence, one that is pleading with almost human desperation. It throws back its head and lets out a howl that doesn't sound like any wolf Mira has ever heard. The sound vibrates with anguish, with purpose. This is insane, she whispers, lowering the rifle. The logical part of her brain screams warnings, lists all the ways this could go wrong. Her fingers brush the cold metal of the latch. She hesitates, trembling. No one helped her when she needed it. No one opened their door. The latch clicks beneath her fingers. The brutal wind slashes at her face as she pulls the door open inch by inch. The silver wolf goes utterly still, amber eyes fixed on hers, its massive body poised between flight and hope. A predator that could tear out her throat before she could raise a hand to defend herself. For one eternal moment, human and wolf regard each other across an ancient divide. Mira steps aside, opening the door wider. Logical or not, she's made her choice. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The world ended with the word unworthy. Mira heard it echo through the great hall as Alpha Riven passed judgment, his voice carrying the weight of law and tradition. 50 pairs of eyes watched her, some with pity, others with contempt, but none with enough courage to speak against their leader. The council has found you unworthy of our pack, Riven declared, his silver eyes never meeting hers. You are stripped of your rank, your right to our protection, and your claim to our name. By sunset, you will leave these territories and never return. The words hit her like physical blows. Mira's knees nearly buckled, but she forced herself to remain upright. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. For what crime? She asked, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the hurricane raging inside her chest. What transgression demands such punishment? Elder Thalia stepped forward, her wrinkled face a mask of practiced indifference. 3 years of failure, child. 3 years of an empty womb when the Alpha needs an heir. The moon has blessed our union with nothing. Your purpose remains unfulfilled. Barrenness. Her great sin was barrenness. I see, Mira said, swallowing the bile rising in her throat. And what of the vows we took beneath the full moon? What of the promises of forever? Riven's jaw tightened. For a moment, Just a fleeting, treacherous moment. Mira thought she saw regret flash across his features, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the cold mask of leadership. "Forever is not a luxury afforded to those who cannot secure our future," he said. "The council has decided. As if 3 years of sharing his bed, his home, his life could be undone by a single word." Riven raised his hand, and 2 beta guards approached, their expressions carefully blank. "Escort her to gather her personal belongings. Nothing more. She will leave by sundown." Mira allowed herself to be led away, her dignity the only possession they couldn't strip from her. The walk to what had once been her home, their home, passed in a blur. She packed mechanically, taking only what she had brought into the marriage: a few clothes, her mother's silver hairbrush, a worn leather journal. When she finished, one of the guards handed her a small pouch of coins. "For your journey," he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. "Keep it," Mira said. "I won't take his pity." The sun hung low on the horizon when they escorted her to the northern edge of the territory. A small crowd had gathered to witness her banishment, their faces solemn but relieved that it was her and not them. "The council's judgment has been carried out," announced Elder Thalia. "Mira, once Luna of the Silver Crest Pack, walks alone from this day forward." Mira scanned the crowd one last time, searching for the one face she both dreaded and longed to see, but Riven was absent. He had delivered his judgment and washed his hands of her. "May the moon guide your path," someone called out, a traditional blessing for departing pack members. "May it light the way home," Mira responded automatically, though she no longer had a home to return to. With that, she turned and walked into the forest, refusing to look back. The first step was the hardest, each one after slightly easier as distance grew between her and the only family she had known for years. Winter was approaching. The forest air carried a biting chill that seeped through her thin jacket. Mira knew she should find shelter before nightfall, but her feet carried her forward without destination or purpose. She had nowhere to go, no pack to take her in. A lone wolf, especially in Omega, rarely survived long in the wild. The sky darkened, bruised clouds gathering overhead. The first snowflakes began to fall, delicate and cold against her skin. Within minutes, the gentle flurries transformed into a blinding squall, the wind howling through the trees like a wounded animal. Mira pressed on, her body growing numb with cold. Perhaps this was nature's mercy, to let her fall asleep in the snow and never wake, rather than face days of hunger and isolation. But something within her refused to surrender. The wolf inside her, so quiet during her years of domestication, now howled with primal defiance. She would not die here, rejected and forgotten. She would not give Riven the satisfaction. The storm intensified, visibility reduced to mere feet ahead. Through the swirling white, Mira spotted a massive oak tree, ancient and gnarled, its roots erupting from the ground like the twisted fingers of a giant. Beneath those roots, she could make out a hollow, not large, but enough to provide shelter from the worsening blizzard. She stumbled toward it, her limbs stiff with cold. As she neared, a scent caught her attention, faint but unmistakable. Blood. Fresh blood. Caution warred with curiosity as Mira dropped to her knees, peering into the darkness beneath the roots. The hollow was deeper than she'd thought, sloping downward into what appeared to be an abandoned den. And there, nestled among dried leaves and tattered fabric, lay a tiny, whimpering bundle. Mira's breath caught in her throat. A pup. A newborn wolf pup. Its eyes still sealed shut, its fur damp with birth fluids and crusted blood. "How?" she whispered, reaching into the hollow. "Who would leave you here?" The pup squirmed weakly at her touch, its tiny body radiating fever. It couldn't be more than hours old, abandoned in this storm. Without its mother or the warmth of a pack, it would not survive the night. Mira gently lifted the pup, cradling it against her chest. As she did, she noticed a marking on its shoulder, a crescent moon, golden against its dark fur. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew that marking. Every member of Riven's bloodline bore it, a symbol of their royal heritage. This was no ordinary abandoned pup. This was a Silvercrest heir. "Impossible," she whispered, examining the mark more closely. But there was no mistake. The golden crescent gleamed even in the dim light, its shape precise and distinctive. Questions flooded her mind. How had a Silvercrest pup ended up abandoned beneath an ancient oak, miles from the pack's territory? Who had hidden it here, and why? The pup whimpered again, a pitiful sound that cut through Mira's confusion. Questions could wait. This tiny life needed warmth, milk, and care, things she could provide, at least for now. Decision made, Mira tucked the pup inside her jacket, against the warmth of her skin. She needed to find better shelter, somewhere to ride out the storm and tend to the abandoned heir. The irony wasn't lost on her. She, the Baron Omega cast out for failing to provide an heir, now responsible for the life of what might be the pack's future alpha. The storm showed no signs of abating. With renewed purpose, Mira pushed onward, one arm cradling the precious burden against her heart, the other shielding her face from the relentless snow. She recalled an old hunting cabin about 2 miles north, abandoned for years but still standing the last time she'd passed it during a border patrol. Night had fully descended by the time the cabin's silhouette emerged from the swirling white. Its roof sagged on one side, and the porch steps groaned beneath her weight. But the door was intact, though swollen with moisture. Mira shouldered it open and nearly wept with relief at finding the interior dry and sheltered from the wind. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and nearby stood a small table with a single chair. A narrow bed frame occupied the opposite corner, its mattress long gone. But most importantly, a stack of firewood remained beside the hearth, left by the cabin's previous occupants. Within minutes, Mira had a small fire crackling. She created a nest of her spare clothes on the floor near the flames, and gently placed the pup at its center. In the better light, she could see it clearly for the first time. A male with midnight black fur, except for the distinctive crescent marking. "Who are you, little one?" she murmured, running a finger along his tiny spine. "And why were you hidden away?" The pup suckled at her finger instinctively, reminding Mira of his most urgent need. She had no milk to give him, but she remembered the old stories her grandmother had told, of wolf mothers who died in childbirth, and how the pack would chew meat into a paste for the orphaned pups. She had no meat, but she did have a small packet of dried jerky among her belongings. It wasn't ideal, but it might keep him alive until she could find something better. Mira chewed a small piece until it formed a soft paste, then carefully fed it to the pup, who accepted it eagerly. "That's it," she encouraged as he swallowed. "Strong already, a true alpha." As the night deepened and the storm raged outside, Mira kept vigil beside the fire, feeding the pup tiny amounts every hour, warming him with her body heat when he shivered. His fever worried her. Newborns were delicate, susceptible to illness without their mother's antibodies. Exhaustion eventually claimed her, dragging her into a fitful sleep filled with fractured dreams, of Riven's cold eyes, of endless snow, of tiny golden crescents floating in darkness. She woke at dawn to the pup's whimpering. The storm had passed during the night, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Mira checked on her tiny charge. The fever seemed to have broken, and his movements were stronger, more coordinated. Relieved, she fed him again, then stepped outside to assess their situation. The forest had transformed overnight, buried beneath a pristine blanket of snow that sparkled blindingly in the morning light. The silence was absolute, the kind that comes only after a heavy snowfall has muffled the world. That's when she heard it, the distant howl of a wolf, then another, and another. Search parties. Mira tensed, her heart accelerating. Were they looking for her? No, that made no sense. The pack had cast her out. They wouldn't waste resources tracking her, which meant they were looking for the pup. Another howl rose, closer this time. Mira recognized the voice. Caden, Riven's most trusted beta and tracker. She had perhaps 15 minutes before they found the cabin, following either her scent or the pup's. She had a choice to make. She could run, taking the pup deeper into the wilderness, trying to outpace wolves who knew these forests better than she did. Or she could stay and face whatever was coming. Mira looked down at the tiny life nestled against her chest, at the golden crescent that marked him as Riven's bloodline. Whatever secret surrounded this pup's birth and abandonment, she had become part of it the moment she rescued him from beneath the oak. "We stay," she whispered to him. "We face them together." She returned to the cabin, built up the fire, and waited. The howls grew closer, more urgent. Then came the sound of running feet, of voices calling to each other through the trees. Mira stood in the center of the cabin, the pup cradled protectively in her arms, her chin lifted in defiance. The door burst open. Riven stood in the threshold, his powerful frame blocking the light, his silver eyes wild with an emotion Mira couldn't name. Behind him, a semicircle of betas waited, tense and alert. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Riven's gaze fell to the bundle in her arms, to the tiny black pup with the golden crescent. All color drained from his face. "That's my son," he whispered, his voice cracking. "And you're the only one who ever protected what was truly mine." The world that had ended with unworthy began anew with those words, though Mira didn't yet know if what followed would be healing or greater destruction. The silence that followed Riven's declaration felt thick enough to cut with a blade. Mira's arms tightened instinctively around the pup, who sensed the tension and began to squirm. "Your son?" she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "How is that possible?" Riven's eyes never left the tiny bundle. "Step back," he commanded his betas without turning. "All of you, wait outside." Though confusion flashed across their faces, none dared question their alpha. They retreated, closing the cabin door behind them, leaving Mira alone with the man who had shattered her world just 24 hours earlier. Riven approached slowly, as if afraid she might bolt. When he reached for the pup, Mira instinctively stepped back. "I won't harm him," Riven said, a rare plea in his voice. "Please, Mira, let me see him." Reluctantly, she allowed Riven to peer at the pup's face. The alpha's expression softened, a complex mixture of wonder and grief transforming his usually stoic features. "He has her eyes," he murmured, gently touching the pup's head with one finger. "Her?" Mira's confusion deepened. "Whose eyes, Riven? What's happening? Yesterday you cast me out for barrenness, and today you appear claiming this abandoned pup is your son." Riven's jaw tightened. He moved to the cabin's single chair and sank into it, suddenly looking exhausted. "It was never about barrenness," he said after a long pause. "That was the council's excuse, not mine. I never wanted to cast you out, Mira. Never. Then why did you?" Her voice rose, years of suppressed emotion finally breaking free. "You stood before our entire pack and called me unworthy. You let them escort me to the border like a criminal. You didn't even have the decency to say goodbye." The pup began to whimper at her raised voice. Mira forced herself to calm down, rocking him gently until he settled. "Because I had no choice," Riven replied, running a hand through his dark hair. "Because someone threatened to kill you if I didn't comply." Mira stared at him, unable to process his words. "Kill me? Who would—" "Elder Thalia," he interrupted, "and the inner council. They discovered my secret, a secret I've kept hidden for years." He rose and began to pace, his movements agitated. "3 years ago, before you and I were mated, I had a brief relationship with a wolf from the Eastern Pines Pack. Her name was Celine." Mira's stomach clenched at the name. The Eastern Pines were ancient enemies of the Silver Crest, their territories separated by a disputed borderland that had seen bloodshed for generations. "It was during peace negotiations," Riven continued. "We were both there representing our packs. One thing led to another." He shook his head. "It meant nothing to either of us, just a moment of weakness during a stressful time." "And yet?" Mira prompted, sensing there was more to the story. "And yet, weeks later, she contacted me secretly. She was pregnant." The pup squirmed in Mira's arms, as if sensing he was the subject of discussion. She adjusted her hold, processing Riven's revelation. "No one could know," Riven said. "If either pack discovered an heir of mixed blood, it would have destroyed any hope for peace. Celine's alpha would have killed her, and the child, for the dishonor. So you hid her pregnancy," Mira concluded. Riven nodded. "I arranged for her to disappear, supposedly on a long-term scouting mission. She stayed in a remote cabin at the edge of neutral territory. I visited when I could, brought supplies, made sure she was safe. All while courting me," Mira added, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Yes, at least he had the decency to look ashamed. Our mating was arranged by the council. I couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. And then," he hesitated, "I grew to care for you, Mira. Deeply, more than I ever expected to. But not enough to tell me the truth. I couldn't risk it. The fewer people who knew, the safer Celine and the child would be." Mira looked down at the pup in her arms, pieces starting to fit together. "She died in childbirth, didn't she? That's why he was hidden beneath that oak." Pain flashed across Riven's face. 2 days ago, I received an urgent message from her. She'd gone into labor early, alone at the cabin. By the time I arrived, his voice broke. She was already gone. The pup was beside her, still wet from birth. But how did he end up beneath the oak tree, miles from anywhere? Riven's expression darkened. I wrapped Celine's body and prepared to bury her. The pup I planned to bring back secretly, to raise him somehow within the pack. But when I returned from digging her grave, the cabin was burning, and the pup was gone. He clenched his fists, rage emanating from him in palpable waves. I tracked a scent to that ancient oak, but lost it in the coming storm. I thought, his voice faltered, I thought whoever took him had killed him, that I'd lost them both. Mira struggled to absorb everything. And my banishment? How does that fit into all this? When I returned to the pack after failing to find the pup, Elder Thalia summoned me privately. She knew everything, about Celine, about the pup. She had spies watching me for months. Riven's expression hardened. She gave me an ultimatum. Banish you publicly for barrenness, or she would reveal my secret and have you killed as my co-conspirator in treason against the pack. So, you chose to banish me, Mira said quietly. To save your life, Riven corrected. Thalia wanted you gone because she suspected you knew my secret. I thought if I complied, if I made the banishment public and final, you would be safe from her suspicion. I never imagined you would find him. He nodded toward the pup. It's almost as if fate guided you to him. Mira was silent for a long moment, processing everything she'd learned. Part of her wanted to rage at Riven for his deception, for the pain he'd caused her. Another part recognized the impossible situation he'd faced. What now? She finally asked. You can't simply return with the pup. The council will know he's not mine, and they'll question where he came from. No, Riven agreed. We can't go back. Not yet. He moved closer, his eyes meeting hers directly for the first time since entering the cabin. Mira, I need your help. I need you to help me raise my son, at least until I can expose Thalia's treachery and make it safe for us to return. Us? She repeated, startled by the inclusion. If you'll still have me, he said softly, after everything I've done, and failed to do. Before she could respond, a sharp knock came at the cabin door. Caden's voice called out, Alpha, riders approaching from the east. Silver crest colors. Riven tensed. The council must have sent them. They can't find us here. He turned to Mira, urgency in his eyes. We need to go, now. Where? There's another cabin, further north beyond our territory. Celine and I used it as a meeting place. No one else knows about it. Mira hesitated only a moment before nodding. Whatever her feelings toward Riven, the pup in her arms deserved protection. Lead the way. They slipped out the back of the cabin, while Caden and the other betas created a diversion. Riven led her through the dense forest, breaking trail through snow that reached their knees in places. The pup remained quiet, as if sensing the need for stealth, though Mira worried about exposing him to the cold for so long. After what felt like hours of trudging through the snow, they crested a ridge and looked down into a small valley nestled between two mountains. A sturdy log cabin stood near a frozen stream, smoke curling from its chimney. Someone's there, Mira whispered, alarmed. Riven shook his head. I sent Caden ahead while we were preparing to leave. He's making it ready for us. Sure enough, as they approached, Caden emerged from the cabin. He'd built up the fire and stocked the small pantry with provisions he'd carried in his pack. The council's search party is headed southeast, he reported. I laid a false trail before coming here. It should buy you some time. Riven clasped his beta's shoulder. Thank you, old friend. Return to the pack now. Tell them you lost my trail in the northern mountains. Say nothing of the pup or Mira. Caden nodded, his eyes flicking to the bundle in Mira's arms. He has the royal mark, he observed quietly. He does, Riven confirmed, which is why no one can know he exists until I'm certain he'll be safe. After Caden departed, Mira and Riven entered the cabin. It was larger than the previous one, with a proper bedroom, a well-stocked kitchen, and a living area centered around a stone hearth. Clearly, this had been prepared as a long-term hiding place. Mira set about creating a proper nest for the pup near the fire, fashioning a small feeding device from a water skin and a scrap of clean cloth. Riven watched her work, his expression unreadable. He needs a name, she said without looking up. We can't keep calling him the pup. Riven was quiet for a moment. Celine wanted to call him Liam. It means strong-willed warrior in the old tongue. Liam, Mira repeated, testing the name. The pup's ear twitched, as if in response. I think he approves. A ghost of a smile touched Riven's lips. Liam it is then. As night fell, they settled into an uneasy coexistence. Riven took the first watch, sitting by the window with his eyes fixed on the dark forest beyond. Mira curled up on a pallet beside Liam's nest, one hand resting protectively near him. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. Her mind churned with everything that had happened, with the revelation that her banishment had been a desperate attempt to protect her, not a rejection. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" she asked softly into the darkness. "About Celine. About the pup." "I would have helped you. I would have understood." Riven's silhouette remained motionless by the window. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. "Would you have?" he finally asked. "Would you really have understood that I fathered a child with another woman while preparing to mate with you? That I continued seeing her secretly throughout our marriage?" Mira had no answer for that. The truth was, she didn't know how she would have reacted. The betrayal would have hurt, certainly, but wouldn't it have been better than the devastating rejection of her banishment? "I've never been good with words," Riven continued, his voice low, "or with feelings. My father trained me to be alpha from the time I could walk, to put the pack first, always, to see emotions as weakness." He turned toward her, his face half illuminated by the fire's dying glow. "But I failed at that too, because I did feel something for Celine, and I feel much more for you." The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and unexpected. "I don't know if I can trust you again," Mira admitted. "Too much has happened." "I know." Riven's voice was heavy with resignation. "But for Liam's sake, we need to find a way forward together. He needs both of us." As if on cue, the pup, Liam, began to whimper. Mira sat up, reaching for him automatically, but Riven was faster. He lifted his son gently, cradling him against his broad chest with surprising tenderness. "He's hungry," Mira said, reaching for the makeshift feeding device she'd prepared earlier. To her surprise, Riven shook his head. "I'll feed him. You should rest." She watched as the alpha settled into the chair by the fire, carefully feeding his son the mixture of ground meat and water she had prepared. His face, usually hard with the responsibilities of leadership, softened as he gazed down at the tiny life in his hands. In that moment, Mira saw a different man from the one who had banished her. Not just the alpha, but a father desperate to protect his child. Perhaps there was more to Riven than she had allowed herself to see during their years together. The next days fell into a pattern. They took turns caring for Liam, who grew stronger by the hour. Riven ventured out occasionally to hunt and to check for signs of pursuit, while Mira maintained their shelter and tended to the pup. They spoke little at first, their interactions limited to Liam's care and practical matters of survival. But gradually, in the quiet moments by the fire, words began to flow more freely. Riven told her about Celine, not to hurt her, but to honor the mother of his child. How she had been fierce and independent. How she had dreamed of a future where their packs could live in peace. How she had insisted on keeping the pregnancy secret for the same reasons he had, to protect the fragile hope of that peace. In turn, Mira shared the pain of her banishment, the devastating sense of worthlessness that had engulfed her when she was deemed unfit to be Luna. She spoke of her fear and anger, but also of the strange sense of purpose that had filled her when she found Liam beneath that ancient oak. "I think I was meant to find him," she confessed one evening, watching the pup sleep. His eyes had begun to open, revealing irises of deepest blue, Celine's eyes, as Riven had noted. "I felt drawn to that tree, as if something was calling me there." Riven contemplated this. The old stories speak of the moon goddess guiding lost wolves to their true purpose. Perhaps she guided you to him, and to you, Mira added softly, surprising herself with the admission. Their eyes met across the cabin, and something shifted between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. On the 10th day of their exile, as a fresh snowfall blanketed the valley, Caden returned with troubling news. "Elder Thalia has declared herself acting alpha in your absence," he reported grimly. "She claims you abandoned the pack to chase after an unworthy mate, proving yourself unfit to lead." Riven's face darkened with rage. "She has no right. The council cannot simply—" "The council supports her," Caden interrupted, All except for your cousin Nora, who's been placed under guard for questioning Thalia's authority. And the pack? Mira asked, concerned for the wolves she'd lived among for years, divided and confused. Some believe Thalia's story that you both betrayed the pack. Others sense something isn't right, but fear speaking out. Riven paced the small cabin, his powerful frame vibrating with tension. We can't allow this to continue. Thalia will destroy everything my father and grandfather built. There's more, Caden said hesitantly. Thalia has announced a blood moon ceremony for the next full moon. She intends to solidify her position with an ancient rite that hasn't been performed in generations. Mira gasped. The blood moon ceremony was a barbaric tradition from their darkest history, a ritual sacrifice meant to appease the moon goddess and cement a new alpha's claim. Who is the sacrifice? She asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. Nora, Caden confirmed, as the only remaining member of the royal bloodline within reach. Riven's cousin, his father's brother's daughter, one of the few who might have a legitimate claim to challenge Thalia's leadership. The full moon is in 7 days, Caden continued. After that, Thalia will have the pack's complete submission, willing or not. The old magic of the blood moon rite will see to that. Riven turned to Mira, his silver eyes burning with determination. We need to stop her. We need to return and reclaim the pack. With Liam? She asked, gesturing to the pup, who was now exploring the cabin on unsteady legs. He's still too young, too vulnerable. No, Riven shook his head. Liam stays hidden. For now, his existence remains our secret, our advantage. Thalia believes she's eliminated all threats to her power, but she doesn't know about him. Mira understood his reasoning, but her heart constricted at the thought of leaving Liam, even temporarily. In just 10 days, the tiny pup had claimed a piece of her soul. I'll stay with him, she offered, though the words cost her. You and Caden return to challenge Thalia. No, Riven said firmly. I need you with me, Mira. The pack needs to see us united. Besides, he hesitated. You're the only one I trust completely in this. The admission startled her. After everything they'd been through, he trusted her? The irony wasn't lost on her. Then who will protect Liam? She asked. Caden cleared his throat. I might have a solution. My sister Talia lives as a loner in the Western Mountains. She left the pack years ago after a disagreement with Elder Thalia. She would gladly keep the pup safe, and no one from the pack knows of her location. Riven and Mira exchanged looks. It wasn't ideal, but they had few options. Time was running out for Nora and for the pack. How soon can she be here? Riven asked. 2 days if I leave now, Caden replied. Riven nodded. Go. Bring her back as quickly as possible. We'll prepare for the journey in the meantime. After Caden departed, Mira sat beside Liam, watching him paw curiously at a twig she'd given him to play with. The thought of leaving him, even in trusted hands, felt like having her heart torn out all over again. We'll come back for him, Riven said, as if reading her thoughts. He knelt beside her, his shoulder brushing against hers. As soon as the pack is safe, we'll bring him home where he belongs. And what then? Mira asked, voicing the question that had lingered unspoken between them. What happens when the pack learns about him, about Celine? They'll know I'm not his mother. They'll know you had a child with an Eastern Pines wolf. Riven was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on his son. Then we'll face it together, he finally said. No more secrets. No more lies. He turned to her, his expression earnest. I've made many mistakes, Mira. Keeping the truth from you was perhaps the greatest. I won't make that mistake again. He reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing against hers. Mira didn't pull away, allowing the contact despite the confusion still swirling within her. Whatever happens, Riven continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, know that I never stopped caring for you. Even when I sent you away, it was tearing me apart inside. Mira's throat tightened with emotion. She wasn't ready to forgive him completely. The wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But as Liam wriggled between them, batting at their joined hands with tiny paws, she felt something new taking root alongside the pain, a fragile hope that perhaps, from the ashes of everything they'd lost, something stronger might yet emerge. The path ahead was fraught with danger. Thalia would not relinquish power easily, and the blood moon ceremony would grant her terrible power if they failed to stop it. But for the first time since her banishment, Mira felt a sense of purpose greater than survival. She had a pup to protect, a pack to save, and maybe, just maybe, a mate to reclaim. Not as she had known him before, but as the man he was becoming before her eyes. Liam yawned, revealing tiny milk teeth, then curled up in her lap, his small body warm against her. As his breathing deepened into sleep, Mira made a silent vow to the moon goddess. She would protect this child with her life, and she would help Riven reclaim their pack, not for herself, but for Liam, so that he might one day take his rightful place as Alpha of the Silver Crest. The moon was waxing toward full, its light streaming through the cabin window and bathing the sleeping pup in silver. In 7 days, it would reach its zenith, and the blood moon ceremony would begin. 7 days to prepare, to plan, to steel themselves for the battle ahead. 7 days to decide if what lay between her and Riven could be rebuilt from the ruins of betrayal, or if some breaks were too deep to ever truly heal. Dawn painted the valley in hues of amber and gold as Mira stood at the cabin door, Liam cradled against her chest. The pup whimpered, as if sensing the impending separation. 2 days had passed swiftly, and now Caden's sister Talia waited nearby, a slender woman with kind eyes and a resolute posture. "He feeds every 4 hours," Mira explained, her voice tight with emotion. "He likes to sleep with something warm against his back. And he—" "Mira," Talia interrupted gently, "I raised 4 pups of my own. I promise you, he will be safe with me." Still, Mira hesitated. In the 12 days since finding Liam beneath the ancient oak, he had become her world. The thought of leaving him, even temporarily, felt like tearing off a limb. Riven approached, his pack slung over his shoulder, his face a mask of forced composure. Only his eyes revealed the struggle within, the same torment Mira felt at abandoning their pup. "It's time," he said softly. Mira nodded, unable to speak. She pressed her lips to Liam's forehead, inhaling his sweet puppy scent one last time, then reluctantly placed him in Talia's waiting arms. "We'll return as soon as we can," Riven told his son, brushing a finger along the pup's cheek. "Be strong, little warrior." Liam's tiny paw reached out, grasping Riven's finger with surprising strength. A promise of sorts, a bond that transcended words. Talia wrapped the pup securely against her body. "Go, do what you must. He will be waiting for your return." With one last look at their son, Mira and Riven turned away, heading south toward Silver Crest territory. Caden led the way, his knowledge of the secret paths vital to their plan. They needed to reach the pack undetected, gather allies, and strike before the blood moon ceremony. They traveled in wolf form, their paws silent on the snow-covered ground, their senses alert for any sign of pursuit. Mira's wolf was smaller than the male's, her fur a rich chestnut brown that contrasted with Riven's silver-gray coat. Despite her size, she kept pace easily, driven by determination and the memory of Liam's trusting eyes. By nightfall, they had covered nearly 30 miles, the familiar sense of Silver Crest territory growing stronger with each passing hour. Caden led them to a hidden cave, where they shifted back to human form and made camp for the night. "We'll reach the outer territories by midday tomorrow," Caden reported, unfurling a rough map drawn on cured hide. "Elder Thalia has doubled the border patrols, but there's a gap here, near the eastern ravine. The younger wolves consider it too dangerous to patrol. Too dangerous for them, but not for us." Riven nodded, studying the steep ravine marked on the map. "Once inside our lands, we'll separate," Caden continued. "I'll gather those still loyal to you among the warriors. You two will need to reach Nora before the ceremony." Mira leaned forward, tracing the path with her finger. "The ceremonial grounds are here, at the sacred pool. The elders will keep Nora in the ancient holding cave nearby. Guarded, no doubt," Riven added grimly. "By Thalia's most trusted allies," Caden confirmed. "Betas, Darius, and Marin, both formidable fighters." Mira's mind raced, evaluating options, searching for weaknesses in their opponents. Marin has a blind spot on his left side, an old injury from the territorial wars. And Darius is afraid of fire, Riven finished, a grim smile touching his lips. A childhood trauma he's never overcome. They continued planning late into the night, their voices low, their faces illuminated by the small fire's glow. Strategies were proposed, evaluated, discarded, and refined until they had a plan that might, just might, succeed against the odds they faced. When the others finally slept, Mira remained awake, her thoughts drifting back to Liam. Was he warm enough? Was he missing them? Had he sensed their absence and cried for them? He's safe. Riven's voice came quietly from the darkness. He moved to sit beside her, his shoulder brushing against hers. Talia will protect him with her life. I know, Mira whispered. It's just hard. Riven nodded, understanding in his silver eyes. They sat in silence for several moments, the tension between them neither fully resolved nor entirely painful. If we succeed, Mira finally asked, what happens afterward? With us? Riven considered her question, his expression thoughtful. I don't know, he admitted. I've caused you great pain. I've broken your trust in ways that may be irreparable, but I hope, he hesitated, searching for the right words. I hope we might find a way forward, for Liam's sake, and perhaps for our own. It wasn't a declaration of undying love. It wasn't a promise of happily ever after, but it was honest, more honest than Riven had been with her in years. And for now, that was enough. The next morning brought heavy clouds and the promise of snow, a blessing in disguise, as the approaching storm would cover their tracks and limit visibility for the border patrols. They traveled swiftly, maintaining wolf form, communicating through subtle gestures, and the silent language of packmates accustomed to hunting together. By midday, they reached the eastern ravine, a jagged scar in the earth where a river had once flowed. The descent was treacherous, loose shale sliding beneath their paws, the wind buffeting them from all sides. Twice Mira nearly lost her footing, saved only by Riven's quick reflexes as he steadied her with his larger body. At the bottom, they paused to catch their breath, the walls of the ravine rising like prison bars on either side. Ahead lay a narrow passage barely wide enough for a wolf to squeeze through, their entry point into Silvercrest territory. Caden went first, his lean form slipping easily through the gap. Mira followed, the rough stone scraping against her sides. Riven came last, his broader frame requiring more effort to navigate the tight space. Once inside Packlands, the familiar scents washed over them. Pine and cedar, the musky odor of deer, the distant smoke from the village hearths. Home. Despite everything, the territory still felt like home to Mira. Caden touched his nose to each of theirs in a gesture of farewell, then darted away through the underbrush, his mission to rally those still loyal to Riven underway. Mira and Riven continued toward the sacred pool, moving with extreme caution, using every trick they knew to mask their scent and avoid detection. The storm broke just as they reached the ceremonial grounds, snow falling in thick, swirling curtains that limited visibility to mere feet. The sacred pool lay still and black in its stone basin, steam rising from its surface despite the frigid air. Ancient magic kept its waters warm year-round, a blessing from the moon goddess according to Pack legend. Nearby stood the Holding Cave, a natural formation where tradition demanded the blood moon sacrifice be kept in isolation for 3 days before the ceremony. 2 guards stood at its entrance, their posture alert despite the worsening weather. Darius and Marin, just as Caden had predicted. Mira and Riven exchanged glances, silently confirming their plan. They separated, circling the clearing from opposite directions, using the storm's fury as cover for their approach. Mira gathered dry branches from beneath a fallen log, creating a bundle that she carried carefully in her jaws. When she was in position, she waited for Riven's signal, 3 short howls barely audible above the wind. The moment she heard it, she struck flint against stone with her paw, a trick she'd learned as a pup. The sparks caught the dried moss she'd prepared, and within moments, her bundle of branches was ablaze. She charged forward, the burning branches held high, directly at Darius. The beta's eyes widened in terror at the approaching flames. He stumbled backward, his training forgotten in the face of his primal fear. Marin moved to intercept her, but the distraction had served its purpose. Riven attacked from behind, his massive form colliding with Marin's blind side. The beta went down hard, unprepared for the assault. Before he could recover, Riven's teeth closed around his throat, not to kill, but to subdue, to force submission. Darius, still transfixed by the flames, never saw Mira drop the burning branches and shift forms. Her human hands gripped a heavy stone, bringing it down with precise force against his temple. He crumpled, unconscious, but alive. Riven, a female voice called cautiously from within the cave. Is that you? Nora, Riven confirmed, shifting to human form. We've come to stop Thalia. His cousin emerged from the shadows, her face gaunt from captivity but her eyes bright with defiance. She embraced Riven fiercely, then turned to Mira with surprise. "The Luna returns," she said, a smile breaking across her face. "I knew Riven would never truly cast you out." "There's much to explain," Mira replied, "but not here. We need to move before others come." They bound and gagged the unconscious guards, then retreated into the forest, making for the pack's gathering stone, an ancient meeting place where Caden would bring their allies when the time came. As they traveled, Mira and Riven took turns explaining everything to Nora, about Celine, about Liam, about Thalia's threats and manipulations. Nora listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "Thalia has always craved power," she said when they finished. "My father once told me she challenged your father for leadership, Riven, before you were born. He defeated her, but spared her life out of respect for her age and knowledge. A mistake," Riven growled. "One I won't repeat." By dusk, they reached the gathering stone. A massive granite boulder split down the middle, creating a natural, sheltered space beneath its halves. Already, wolves were gathering in the growing darkness, their eyes reflecting the last light of day. Caden had done his work well. Nearly 30 pack members waited for them. Warriors, hunters, even some of the older council members who had grown suspicious of Thalia's sudden rise to power. "My friends," Riven addressed them, standing tall upon the gathering stone, "you have shown great courage by coming here tonight. Elder Thalia has betrayed our pack, seized power through deception, and plans to cement her rule with the blood of my cousin." Murmurs of anger rippled through the gathered wolves. "Tonight, we reclaim what is ours," Riven continued. "Tonight, we restore the rightful leadership of the Silver Crest Pack." A howl of approval rose from the assembled wolves, quickly stifled lest it alert Thalia's patrols. Mira stepped forward to stand beside Riven. "Some of you may wonder why I have returned after my banishment," she said, her voice clear and strong. "The truth is that my banishment was built on lies. Lies told by Elder Thalia to drive a wedge between your Alpha and his Luna." She looked at each face in turn, meeting their eyes without flinching. "I return not to reclaim my position, but to stand for what is right, to help protect this pack that has been my home for years." An older wolf, Oren, one of the council members, stepped forward. "The Luna's scent has changed," he observed, his nose twitching. "There is something different about you." Mira tensed. She had forgotten that pregnancy, even in its early stages, altered a female's scent to those with sensitive noses. Before she could respond, Riven placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Much has happened since Mira left our lands," he said smoothly. "All will be explained in time. For now, we must focus on stopping Thalia before the blood moon rises." Oren studied them both for a long moment, then nodded, though his expression remained curious. Mira released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The last thing they needed was for rumors about her pregnancy to distract from their purpose. They finalized their plan quickly. The blood moon would rise in 3 hours. Thalia and her closest allies would gather at the sacred pool to prepare for the ceremony. Their most vulnerable moment would be during the ritual cleansing, when tradition demanded they enter the pool unarmed and unclothed. As darkness deepened, they moved through the forest toward the ceremonial grounds, spreading out in a wide circle to surround the area completely. Mira stayed close to Riven, her senses hyper-alert, her wolf form tense with anticipation. Through the trees, they could see torches blazing around the sacred pool. Thalia stood at its edge, wrapped in the ceremonial red robe of an acting alpha, her white hair gleaming in the firelight. Around her gathered 12 supporters, council members and warriors who had aligned themselves with her cause. Riven gave the signal, a low growl that passed from wolf to wolf around the circle, alerting each to prepare for the attack. They would wait until the ritual cleansing began, when Thalia would be most vulnerable. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they watched the preparations. Ceremonial herbs were burned, their pungent smoke rising into the night air. Ancient words were chanted, a haunting melody that raised the fur along Mira's spine. Finally, Thalia removed her robe, revealing her aging but still powerful body. She stepped into the sacred pool, the steaming waters rising to her waist. One by one, her supporters followed, shedding their clothing and weapons at the water's edge. Now, Riven's howl split the night, the signal for attack. From all sides, wolves burst from the darkness, converging on the sacred pool. Thalia's supporters scrambled in confusion, caught literally naked and defenseless. Mira charged directly toward Thalia, who remained eerily calm despite the chaos erupting around her. The elder's eyes narrowed as she recognized her attacker. "So the Baron Luna returns," she sneered, backing deeper into the pool. "Have you come to beg for forgiveness, little Omega?" Mira didn't waste breath on a response. She leapt, shifting midair into human form, her momentum carrying them both beneath the surface of the pool. The warm water closed over her head as she grappled with the older woman, their bodies twisting in a deadly underwater dance. Thalia was stronger than she looked, her fingers like iron as they closed around Mira's throat. Spots danced before her eyes as oxygen became precious, her lungs burning with the need to breathe. Just as darkness began to edge her vision, a powerful force yanked Thalia away. Riven had joined the fight, his human form grappling with Thalia, dragging her to the surface. Mira broke through the water, gasping for air. Around the pool, the battle was already ending. Thalia's supporters, outnumbered and caught unprepared, had mostly surrendered. Only a few continued to fight, their struggles growing more desperate as defeat became inevitable. Riven held Thalia by the throat, her feet dangling above the water's surface. "It's over," he growled. "Your treachery ends tonight." "Fool," Thalia spat, her voice strained but still defiant. "You think you've won? The blood moon rises even now. The ceremony has begun whether you wish it or not." Mira looked up. Through the swirling snow, the moon was visible, full and heavy, a deep crimson that bathed the clearing in bloody light. The blood moon, once in a generation, when the veil between worlds thinned and ancient magics awakened. A strange energy seemed to pulse from the sacred pool, its waters glowing with an inner light that grew stronger with each passing moment. Thalia began to laugh, a chilling sound that echoed across the suddenly silent clearing. "The goddess comes," she proclaimed. "She will choose her alpha this night." As if in response to her words, the surface of the pool began to churn, steam rising in thick clouds that took shape above the water. The ghostly outline of a woman, tall and ethereal, her features obscured by mist. The pack members fell to their knees, overcome by the presence of something ancient and powerful beyond their understanding. Even Riven lowered Thalia back to the water, his expression a mixture of awe and trepidation. The misty figure hovered above the pool, slowly rotating as if examining each wolf in turn. When its gaze fell upon Mira, she felt a jolt like lightning through her body, a connection that transcended physical sensation. "My daughter," a voice whispered in her mind, though no sound disturbed the air. "You carry the future within you." Mira's hand went instinctively to her stomach, to the tiny life growing there. Not Liam, but another child. Riven's true child, conceived during their brief reunion at the cabin. A child she had suspected but not yet confirmed, until now. The misty figure drifted toward Thalia, who stood tall and proud, her arms outstretched in welcome. "Great goddess," she intoned, "I have prepared the sacrifice as tradition demands. Accept this offering and bless me as alpha of the Silver Crest Pack." For a heartbeat, the apparition seemed to consider her words. Then it moved, not toward Thalia, but to Riven, enveloping him in its ghostly embrace. "The true alpha stands before me," the voice resonated, no longer just in Mira's mind but heard by all. His bloodline unbroken, his heart tested, his mate worthy. "No!" Thalia shrieked, lunging toward Riven with clawed hands. "I am the worthy one. I have served the pack for generations while the royal line grew weak and corrupt." Before she could reach him, the misty figure expanded, forming a barrier between Thalia and her target. "You sought to spill innocent blood for power," the voice condemned. "You threatened the alpha's mate and would have sacrificed his kin. The pack's strength lies not in fear, but in unity. Not in purity of blood, but in loyalty of heart." The mist swirled, condensing into a more defined shape, a woman of impossible beauty, her eyes like twin moons, her hair flowing around her like living silver. The moon goddess, no longer a myth or legend but present among them. "Hear me, wolves of the Silver Crest," she commanded. "Your alpha returns to you with new wisdom earned through suffering. His Luna brings strength born of compassion. And soon, a child of mixed blood will join them, a child destined to unite what has long been divided." The pack members bowed their heads, accepting the divine judgment. all except Thalia, who stood rigid with fury, her aged face contorted in hatred. "Never," she snarled. "I will not be cast aside for this weakling and his barren mate." With unexpected speed, she lunged at Mira, a ceremonial dagger appearing from nowhere in her hand. Riven moved to intercept, but he was a fraction too slow. The blade sliced through the air and stopped, inches from Mira's heart, held back by an invisible force. Thalia struggled against it, her entire body trembling with the effort, but the dagger would not move forward. "Enough," the goddess said, her voice like thunder. "You have chosen your path, Elder Thalia. So be it." The mist enveloped Thalia completely. When it receded, where the elder had stood, only a white wolf remained, beautiful, but with eyes that still burned with human awareness and rage. "Until you learn compassion," the goddess declared, "this form shall be yours. Neither human nor truly wolf, neither pack nor lone. A wanderer between worlds, witnessed by none, remembered by few." The white wolf howled once, a sound of pure anguish, then turned and fled into the forest, disappearing into the swirling snow. The goddess turned back to Riven and Mira, her form already beginning to fade as the blood moon reached its zenith. "Remember this night," she told them. "Remember that the pack's strength lies in its bonds, not its boundaries. The child you already love, though not of your blood," her gaze lingered on Mira, "and the child you now carry, though not yet known to the father." She glanced at Riven, whose eyes widened in shock. "Both represent the future I have chosen for the Silver Crest, a future of unity, not division." With those words, she dissolved into mist, sinking back into the sacred pool. The red glow faded from the moon, leaving only the normal silver light of the full moon shining down upon them. For several heartbeats, no one moved or spoke. Then Riven turned to Mira, his expression a mixture of wonder, joy, and disbelief. "A child?" he whispered, his hand reaching tentatively toward her stomach. "Our child?" Mira nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I suspected, but wasn't certain until now." Around them, the pack began to stir, rising to their feet, looking to their alpha for guidance in the aftermath of the divine visitation. Riven composed himself with visible effort, turning to address them. "The goddess has spoken," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "The threat to our pack has been removed. Now we rebuild, together." A cheer rose from the gathered wolves, their loyalty to their alpha reaffirmed by the night's events. Questions would come later, about Liam, about Mira's return, about the goddess's prophecy of unity. But for now, relief and celebration took precedence. As the pack dispersed, returning to the village to spread the news of Thalia's defeat and the goddess's blessing, Riven and Mira remained by the sacred pool, the water now still and ordinary once more. "A child of mixed blood will join them," Riven quoted softly. She was speaking of Liam. "And our pack uniting with the eastern pines," Mira added, understanding dawning. "That's what she meant about uniting what has long been divided." Riven nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Peace between our packs, something that has eluded us for generations. And Liam will be the bridge, along with our new little one," Mira said, placing her hand over his where it rested on her stomach. Riven drew her into his arms, holding her as if she were something infinitely precious. "Can you forgive me?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "For all the pain I caused you, for the lies and secrets." Mira considered the question seriously. The hurt had been real, the betrayal deep, but these past weeks had shown her a different side of Riven, his vulnerability, his capacity for growth, his fierce love for his son. For their son, as she now thought of Liam. "I think forgiveness is a journey, not a destination," she finally replied. "But I'm willing to walk that path with you, one day at a time." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be challenges ahead, explaining Liam's existence to the pack, building bridges with the eastern pines, healing the wounds left by Thalia's brief reign. But for the first time since her banishment, Mira felt truly hopeful about the future. "First," she said, "we need to bring our son home." Riven's face lit up at her words. "Not just the pup or Liam, but our son." "Yes," he agreed. "Our family should be together." As they left the ceremonial grounds, walking hand in hand toward the pack village, the snow began to ease, the clouds parting to reveal a star-filled sky. Somewhere to the north, in a cozy cabin nestled between mountains, their son awaited their return. And within Mira, a new life grew, a symbol of hope, of second chances, of love reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. The abandoned Omega had indeed found the Alpha's inheritance. Not just his son, but his heart, his trust, and a future brighter than either could have imagined on that bitter night of banishment. Under the watchful eye of the moon, now returned to its silver glory, the Alpha and his Luna made their way home, their path illuminated by starlight and the promise of tomorrow. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.